Welcome to ITU Future Innovators, a podcast hosted by youth for youth, spotlighting the voices of innovative young people tackling global challenges head-on. Brought to you by ITU, the UN Agency for Digital Technologies. In this episode, we're launching into space and exploring how youth are driving innovation, policy, and sustainability in the satellite and space law sectors. Hamza Hameed and Rosa Almenar, members of the ITU Secretary General's Youth Advisory Board, unpack the role of AI in space, the importance of young voices in shaping global policy, and how space technologies can bridge the digital divide. Bold ideas, real stories, and the tech that's powering a better tomorrow. This is ITU Future Innovators.
Hi, Rosa. How are you?
Hi, Hamza. I'm good. How are you?
Good. It's been a very exciting week here in Geneva. We've just attended the WISES Plus 20 event and the AI for Good Summit. And it's been so exciting seeing all of the young people around engaging with AI, all of these amazing ideas on display. But would you like to introduce yourself for our audience and for our listeners?
Yes. Hello, everyone. My name is Rosa Almenar, and I am a PhD candidate in AI and space law at the University of Valencia in Spain.
Wonderful. So Rosa and I are both part of the ITU Secretary General's Youth Advisory Board. Hi, everyone. My name is Hamza. I'm a Pakistani lawyer, currently serving as the head of space and development at Access Partnership, which is a consulting firm. I'm based out of their offices in Singapore, and I've also had the pleasure of being the chairperson of the Space Generation Advisory Council, or SGAC, which is the largest network of students and young professionals in the space sector between 2022 and 2024. And that's where I met Rosa, because we're both big advocates of involving more young people in the space and satellite world. But not only involving them, but helping young people shape and drive policy-related conversations for the space community and for space law and policy. So, Rosa, you talked about your PhD on AI and space law. What's that about? Please tell us.
Of course. Well, there was a session in AI for Good this year called AI for Space. And that was especially related to my PhD research because I mainly focus my research on how AI, if we have satellites powered by AI who cause damage, how that damage is going to be allocated in terms of liability, right? So, we have all these regulatory ecosystem. We have the EU AI Act right now. Now we have this proposal for a EU Space Act, which very briefly mentions artificial intelligence, but none of the space treatises, make any reference to these technological developments. So there is a big of a liability gap there, and my research is mainly centered around this idea of trying to solve these issues.
Wonderful. And what about young people? Why is AI and space and space law important for young people, do you think?
Well, we are the next generation. So every technological development that is happening or is going to happen will affect our daily lives. Same as space. Space has many applications in our daily lives, which are affecting especially youth lives. So we have to be there, we have to be in the conversation, and we have to keep up with all these updates, technological updates, if we don't want to be left behind. But now tell me about you, Hamza, about the work that you do at Access Partnership. Also, we can talk a bit about SGSC if you fancy.
Yeah, I think, look, from a very early stage, for me, I've always been a big believer on how space can contribute to sustainable development and can help make people's lives better. We've been at the ITU all week, and one of the themes and things we keep talking about is this huge digital divide whereby 2.6 million people around the world still remain offline and still remain unconnected. More than 50% of these people are young people and are the next generation that need to be online, that need to be participating in this digital economy in order to help themselves be successful, in order to contribute to the world in general. And I'm a firm believer that space and satellite is a vehicle through which we can fix this connectivity gap and bridge this digital divide. For a long time, with my work at Access Partnership, with my work with the ITU, as well as with our work collectively with the Space Generation Advisory Council, I think that internet connectivity and the ability to be online is as important as a fundamental human right.
Yes.
Because in this modern digital world where everything is online, you cannot go out even a day without being connected to the internet. I mean, you and I, we can't even imagine a life where we were not online on a given day, talking to our friends, or even, sending emails, exchanging contacts, whatever. And the idea that so many young people around the world don't have that access is, in my opinion, absolutely ridiculous.
Of course.
And with space technologies, particularly with the advent of connectivity and broadband connectivity from LEO, I think it's a fantastic opportunity to connect these people that have historically been in unserved or underserved areas where it's sometimes even impossible to build terrestrial infrastructure or set up terrestrial networks. But with space, you can beam down signals anywhere, right?
Yes.
And the idea that in the future, these people will not only be able to connect through satellite, but even exchange messages with technologies like direct-to-device coming online, exchange messages, connect the data connections through satellite. I think that'll be a real game changer. And so a majority of my work at Access Partnership is really based around looking at how space can contribute to sustainable development and can help us as the international community move towards achieving the sustainable development goals, not just through connectivity, but also other goals. Like you mentioned the AI for Good conference where there was this space and AI session. And I was fascinated to see some of the discussions in that session where the panelists illustrated how AI is being used by space companies to read and understand data collected in space for things like natural disasters, deforestation, the migration and movement of refugees, and how all of this data is being translated into real-time analytics and solutions to help address some of these problems and make some of these challenges easier for us.
Of course.
So, I'm super excited about the future of AI in space, about this future of the space sector in general, but mostly about the way young people will use these applications as they interact and engage in the digital economy. But you mentioned, the Space Generation Advisory Council and young people. I'd love to learn more. I mean, I think the first time I met you was when you were contributing to the policy group within the SGAC community. Do you want to talk more about how young people are shaping policy in the space sector?
Of course. So, well, the Space Generation Advisory Council is a great example. Within SGAC, we have this Space Generation Advocacy and Policy platform, and it gathers different individuals interested in contributing to policy work in different areas. So I've particularly contributed to responsible space behavior, to space sustainability, to European space exploration, and particularly the space sustainability group. We produced the IPASS, APASS, the Intergenerational Pact for Space Sustainability, which is groundbreaking work in terms of this intergenerational perspective that SGAC is so interested in conveying to the world, that youth voice matters, and especially in the space sector, not only youth voice matters, but also women voices matters. And I wanted to link this up with what you mentioned before, that 50% of these 2.6 billion people unconnected are young people. And I wanted to add that also they are mostly women and young girls. And that is why it is so important. And I mentioned this during the WIS's breakfast of the Network of Women Ministers and Leaders in ICT, because there is a need for solutions for satellite connectivity to really reach women-led communities. There are a lot of communities, and as you mentioned, underserved areas. We have certain regions in Africa, certain regions in Latin America, where connectivity just doesn't reach, and they are missing out. They don't have access to e-commerce. They don't have access to online education. So we really have to talk about it. We really have to pitch this women focus point, which also was very well manifested in both AI for Good and WSIS plus 20. And I think it is really, really important to try to bring this up. And within SJC also, there is a group on gender equality. So I believe that we should focus both on youth, but also having a female perspective is much needed on the table, especially if we are talking about policy work and about the space sector, which is up until now mostly dominated by male presence.
No, that's true. I think at the AI for Good event just this morning, we saw you participating in a session on women shaping policy in AI standards. You know, what do you think about that?
Well, as I conveyed, I think that there should always be an intergenerational perspective, especially in this sort of event. So I was the only young person participating in the panel, which was already showing that ITU is committed to deliver a space, to provide a space for young people to raise their voices. I truly believe that speaking up redefines leadership. So for me, being able to engage with such admirable women already with an impressive career was life-changing. And the fact that I got to speak next to them, that I got to contribute my insights as well, is fascinating and very relevant, especially since the way I see it, we are young people with our own capacities, our own capabilities, our own interests, and we really want to change the world. But at the same time, we cannot do it without our seniors. So having this intergenerational approach is very much needed. And I truly consider it very important that we need, for instance, more funds for young women to be able to participate in these events. Also, there is the Space Sustainability Forum coming up. Now that we talked about space sustainability, so I participated last year. I was also the young female in the summit, so to say. And I really hope that this next edition we have more young female voices there representing different parts of the world, because that's another issue that sometimes certain communities and certain women communities don't feel represented at all, or just women per se don't have any references to look up to, know any top leader profiles they can really get inspired by. And the fact that we, with the Youth Advisory Board, get to be there and get to experience this, I think it can really, really help in this sense and provide some inspiration for these young people.
No, for sure. I think one of the things you mentioned there is the upcoming Space Sustainability Forum. And just the topic of space sustainability, I think, is so relevant to the next generation, right? You know, we've been exploring outer space since the 60s and the 70s when the first satellites were launched. But really, right now is when we see thousands of satellites being launched every year. And the decisions regarding launching those satellites, regarding using outer space, are currently being made by a generation which in the future will not be around when our generation or the next generations will be using outer space or will have ambitions for the space sector. And so it's so important that conversations right now and policy right now is shaped with that sustainable thinking in mind, whereby our orbits are preserved or are used in a manner such that next generations and future generations can continue to benefit from them. And not just our orbits, but even exploration of other celestial bodies like the moon or Mars. You know, we have a lot of ambitious missions that are planned right now that are supposed to go up this year or next year. I think this year alone we've had already 5 missions to the moon, which is a record for any given year.
Yes.
And as we participate in this sort of next era of space activities, space sustainability is such an important concept and such an important discussion where young people must be involved.
Of course.
Because it's really the interest of the next generation that's being discussed as we legislate or as we put forward policy for what a sustainable space environment looks like. So I'm very excited for the Space Sustainability Forum here in Geneva in October, as well as for International Youth Day, where we'll be talking more and more about the importance of young people's participation in the space sector and in ICT generally. So, yeah, I think the Youth Advisory Board's been a great vehicle through which we can channel some of our thoughts to the international community, but also participate in bringing those thoughts that we collect from the general young community from all around the world to these sessions and to these forums where we can then help legislators and policymakers understand them and push them forward.
So, Hamza, as previous chair from SGC, what advice could you give young people to enter the space sector, or how do you think young people could meaningfully engage with the space sector?
Yeah, so I say this everywhere. Space is not the future. Space is right now. Space is the present. Every activity that we do at the moment somehow uses or depends on the space industry. So if you think of all of the things that you as a listener might have done today, you might have taken a cab which relied on a map in space, a GPS in space. You might have ordered food. You might have traded stocks. You might have checked the weather, all of which are facilitated by space-based applications. So think for young people, it's so important to recognize that the space economy is growing at an exponential rate at the moment. We're expected to hit 1 trillion by 2040. And given these numbers and given the importance that space applications play to every activity that we do at the moment, it's pivotal for young people to get involved in the space sector. And then how they can do that, there's so many forums for you. So things such as the Space Generation Advisory Council organize events, activities, offer scholarships, dedicated and designed specifically for young people that you can access at all times. Then bodies such as the ITU have venues such as the Generation Connect, such as the Youth Advisory Board, such as the Global Change Makers, all of which are designed only and exclusively for young people to participate in the space industry and to contribute to shaping space policy in all parts of the world. We see chapters of things such as the Internet Governance Forum in every country where you are having active discussions on space and satellite. So I think there's plenty of avenues and channels through which you can get involved in the space sector, but there, I'm sure you can also comment on some others that you've seen in your career.
Yes, of course. I would just say that if you want to get more involved with the space sector as a young person, you just have to dare to be bold and reach to many people as possible. You can reach to us. You can go to any fora that is happening in your country. You can join online communities. I think we are both space lawyers, so we speak from the same point of departure, but for instance, the space law community in particular is like very welcoming, and I think that establishing connections with people working in the field is also an interesting avenue for any young person interested in pursuing this field. Of course, the ones that you mentioned, SGC is a great one. We both come from there, so of course, it is close to our heart. But yes, just there to get involved and be bold and just talk to people, and you will see how you get there in the end.
Wonderful. Well, Rosa, it's been great chatting with you today, and I hope to talk more to our listeners in the future. Please do reach out. Please do engage with us. We're very active and available on social media or by email or any channels you want, and we look forward to seeing all of you in the future. Thank you.
Likewise, thank you so much.
And that's a wrap on this episode of ITU Future Innovators. Huge thanks to Hamza Hameed and Rosa Almenar for guiding us through an interesting conversation on youth, AI, and the future of space. From space sustainability to satellite-powered connectivity, Hamza and Rosa showed us how young leaders are shaping global policy and driving innovation in an exciting sector. Thanks for tuning in, and don't forget to subscribe for more conversations from exciting young innovators shaping our digital future. Still curious? You can find out more information at itu.int. This has been an ITU Digital production.